The Russian sleep experiment was an experiment performed by the Russian military during, nearing the end of World War II. Now, the experiment was to see the effects of a gas that prevented sleep on, I believe it was 5 prisoners of war. Now, these prisoners volunteered because they were told, falsely, that if they went through with the experiment, they would be given their freedom. So, when the experiment came, the Russian scientists oversaw it. Now, keep in mind, this was back in the 40s, so the only thing they had to monitor it with was a few portholes outside the chamber that they could look through, and an intercom system. The first day the people went in, and the gas was set down. They all acted normally at first, all talking and playing the board games, some eating some of the food they were provided. But around the second day, all they seemed to talk about anymore was super traumatic experiences from their past. Then, eventually they stopped talking altogether, and a lot of them would find the microphones and be whispering stuff to the scientists. For some reason, they all believed they could catch the favor of the scientists by ratting out their friends. Of course, that didn't work. On the third day, a man was heard screaming endlessly inside the chamber. He screamed, and he screamed, and he screamed, and he screamed, until eventually he stopped, and they saw large amounts of blood coming from his mouth. They assumed he had ripped his vocal cords, and was now unable to make a sound. Then more started screaming, but once they turned off the intercoms, they seemed to stop. Then, no wait, it wasn't that made them stop, my bad. Then, a few of them, taking newspapers and their own excrement, smeared them all over the windows, so they couldn't see it, so the scientists could not see them anymore. Once the scientists were unable to see the subjects, they stopped screaming. And the scientists heard nothing for the next about a week, I think it was. To make sure that the subjects were still alive, they measured the oxygen intake. And not only were the people breathing still, but they were taking in as much oxygen as a person who was aggressively working out would take in. Now, this was strange because they never heard a sound come from the chamber. And they expected, especially since there were 5 people in there, that there should be at least some noise. Worried that something had gone wrong, maybe they were comatose, the scientists that is, spoke into the intercom and said, well, they weren't supposed to do this, but they did anyway. They spoke into the intercom and said, "We will be letting you out. We're opening the doors and bringing you fresh air. You will be freed from the gas." The subjects, they only heard one response, which was the test subject saying, "We no longer wish to be free." Startled, they opened the chamber anyway, and the moment they did, there was nothing but screaming, coming from both the people inside the chamber, begging to be put back in under the gas, and the scientists and guards who saw them. You see, 4 out of the 5 subjects were still alive. However, the ones that were still alive had torn themselves open. Their digestive systems were seen on the floor, still working as well. Also, they had torn off chunks of their flesh and clogged the drainage with them, causing 4 inches of water and blood. How much of it was blood is still unknown, but water and blood to fill on the floor. And, yes. The food they had for the last few days had not been touched. Instead, they figured out that the subjects were committing cannibalism and auto-cannibalism, which is when someone eats themselves. They were all taken out and immediately sent to surgery to have their organs put back inside of them. Now, when the first subject was laid on the table, and they were about to give him... Well, actually, something I should say first is that even though their bones, muscles were showing, and all their organs are spilled out, they put up an unbelievable fight on the way out. When people were dragging them out, they actually managed to kill one guard by breaking his ribs, jaw, and neck, and almost kill another, because one of the subjects ripped off his testicles and tore out an artery with his teeth. When the first subject was prepped for surgery, and they went to sedate him, he tried his best to resist. He slapped the needle out of the doctor's hand and went to attack the doctor. The nurses all held them down, and he wound up breaking one of their arms. Finally, they gave him the sedative, but it seemed the moment he fell asleep, he flatlined and died. When they got the next subject, he begged and pleaded not to be put under sedative. When they asked him why, his only response was, "I cannot fall asleep." They went on with the surgery without him being sedated. As they cut him open to put his organs back inside, the nurse was freaked out because every time she would look at him, he would look back and smile. He also would laugh the entire time of the surgery, making it very difficult. But at the end, it was successful. And the doctor was baffled because there should be no physical way someone could survive something like that. Then, the last subject was prepped for surgery. This was the one who had ripped out his vocal cords. When the doctor asked him if he'd like to be sedated, he furiously shook his head no. But the doctor did give him a numbing agent so that he wouldn't be able to move, therefore making the surgery a lot easier. But as the surgery went, every time the doctor cut, his smile would get bigger. Until, near the end of the surgery, when the doctor finished, he started wheezing and doing the best he could to scream, and the doctor realized it must be something important, so he handed him a pencil and pen, and the subject wrote one note: "Keep cutting." The scientists wondered what to do, considering that their experiment had failed. They could have serious repercussions. They could get in some serious trouble. They considered executing the test subjects, but a military leader told them it was probably a better idea, and a more humane idea, to just put them back under the gas. The day came, and they decided to have 3 of the scientists go in with them under the gas to observe and monitor what happens. At this point, one of the scientists that was going to be sent in grabbed the guard's gun. He shot his fellow scientists and the guard. He shot one of the subject that couldn't speak in the head, and then pointed at the subject who still could speak. He said, "I'll be damned if I'm going in there with you. What the hell are you?" The subject looked at him and said, "Have you forgotten already? We're the demons that hide behind you. We're what you suppress with your dreams. We're what you hide from when you go to that nocturnal haven where we cannot tread." The doctor then pointed the gun directly at his chest, the subject's chest that is, and shot him right through the heart before then committing suicide. And that is the Russian sleep experiment.